world of e-commerce can be tricky, and that's why you need the experts to help take you to the next level. This is Delivering E-commerce, and this is Chris Parsons.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Delivering E-commerce. I'm your host, Chris Parsons, and tonight I have a very special guest, Drew Green. Drew, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Chris?
Very good, Drew. Last time we spoke, it's been many years. We first connected through my work at Metroland, and you were just launching Shop.ca in the marketplace, and that was an exciting time frame. I would love for you to take our audience tonight through your journey. What have you been doing in your career, and how did it lead to where you are today with Indochino?
Yes. So it's so good to be here, Chris. I appreciate you having me on, you reaching out and having me on. My journey goes back a couple decades now, right? I born in Toronto, Canada, went to school there in university, was overseas for a couple of years, but really my professional journey started in Toronto. Was really fortunate to help build a startup in Toronto, technology company that ended up selling to DoubleClick. And as part of that acquisition, got to move to New York. And so, here I was kind of in my mid 20s with this enormous opportunity to go to the US, get great experience and really grow my foundation. And so I moved to New York, ended up spending about 10 years in New York. And, for about half that time was at DoubleClick as head of retail. Which was just a phenomenal opportunity, especially at such a young age. And as most would know, DoubleClick ended up selling to private equity, and then after that to Google. From there, just really wanted to build e-commerce marketplaces, and did that. Was able to build one of the top 10 U.S. Marketplaces, top 10 UK marketplaces, both funded by Amazon and Bill Gates at the time. And then came to Canada and built out Canada's first marketplace. That's almost 10 years ago now. I think it's 9.5, roughly, since I moved back to Canada. And, for me, I really wanted to do two things. Number one, I wanted to raise my boys Canadian. It was super important to me that they grow up here in Canada. And the second thing is I wanted to, invest in Canadian entrepreneurs and be a Canadian entrepreneur and really help and empower the ecosystem. And I think that's been a really rewarding part of my career. So now, again, almost 10 years, we've invested in 30 companies. Indochino now I'm in my 6th year here, growing what is now a global brand, and just feel really fortunate to be able to be part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Canada.
That's great. I mean, your history is so rich, and you talk about DoubleClick and the work that you did there. And I remember, because of obviously being at Metroland, the Shop.ca experiment, and the fact that marketplace was so unique, and what you were doing from the way you were working with the suppliers to get them engaged, leveraging their content and getting them to become sellers on the Shop.ca site. When you were bringing that to market, it almost felt foreign, because it was one of the first marketplaces, if not the first. And did you have to do a lot of selling to bring that to life, to get people to understand what your vision was?
Yeah, I mean, looking back, it was an incredible experience, right? Because if you can imagine, it's odd to say this now, but you had the largest retailers in the country not selling online. So, yeah. Canadian Tire at the time wasn't selling online. Hudson's Bay had not launched yet, when we launched. And so, here we were in Canada kind of forging, a path really for what has become, really big channel and category, for the consumer. But 10 years ago, man, it was super interesting, right? Because it wasn't where it was in the US or other, countries globally, it being e-commerce. And I feel like we had a really big part, or played a big role in bringing, Canadian retail online. And for that, I'm really proud.
Well, one of the takeaways I've leveraged in my career is the fact that you partnered with the Toronto Star, Metroland, and worked through an agreement on how to get impressions, like basically a good go-to-market strategy to get some advertising and product placement in print and digital through a very good collaboration. And I've leveraged that going forward when I've launched different e-commerce web platforms, as well as to partner with a publishing partner to get more impressions instead of just buying those impressions, which can get very costly. So I love to hear that. Where did you come up with that concept?
For us, well, I think first and foremost, I developed really early on in my career a philosophy around people, product, and partners as kind of a core roadmap for building and growing companies. And so, we knew, and I knew with Shop, that we wanted to, in order to be successful, we would need to partner. By nature, a marketplace is dependent on its merchant partners. But we went a step further, and we thought, okay, what demand side partners could we really partner with to drive, awareness and ultimately traffic and sales? And it was a super innovative deal at the time.
Yeah.
And I've since done it again. We did a $35 million deal here at Indochino with National Post and Post Media. And that, put us on the map at Indochino. It made, us one of the leading Canadian retail brands just from an awareness standpoint almost overnight. And so partnerships has always been a core part of the philosophy in terms of growing a company. And that's why we did that, back then.
Yeah, it was really innovative. And like I said, I've leveraged it myself going forward. And, I think it's one of those really innovative pieces when you're young in your career and you watch someone come in, and I was able to steal that nugget from you, and I thank you for that. But ultimately, it was brilliant. It was just a different way to think about media and how to leverage partnerships. And it was something that I encourage other e-commerce folks to start thinking about as well, as that collaboration, because it was a good move. So let's talk about Indochino. For anyone that might not know what Indochino is, would love for you to start telling us about Indochino, please.
So Indochino is one of the fastest growing brands, apparel brands now in the world. We're a custom apparel brand though. So, whether you come in store or you come online, we allow consumers to build a one-of-a-kind garment, whether that's suiting or shirting or outerwear, and really create their own personal style. And, one of the things that I think about often is that we're not necessarily a retail brand. We're actually a platform for consumers to create clothing and like I said, create that one-of-a-kind style for themselves. I think we're the second fastest growing retail brand in Canada behind Canada Goose. So, again, just a tremendous amount of success, and, really grateful to be part of a fantastic team doing it.
And when you launch in each market, I think you're above 50 showrooms now. How many locations are you touting these days?
When we entered COVID, so you think about March 2020, which I think we'll always remember that month for when the world sort of stood still there for a couple weeks. We had 53 showrooms, and one of the things that I'm very, very focused on is resiliency, and just making sure that you're always thinking both in the moment but also long term. And so we set a goal and sort of set a path to make sure the company, when COVID did subside and ultimately come to an end, which it will, we were even better positioned than prior COVID. So we've got 79 showrooms now. So we've launched essentially 2 showrooms per month in a pandemic on average. And that's, that's covering, I think, 44 different markets across North America. Most of our business is now in the US. I think we're 85% of our business is actually in the US. But yeah, so 79 showrooms, long answer. Sorry about that.
No, that's great. I mean, that just shows you the ability to pivot during COVID. And you, like you said, everyone else was on a standstill probably for the last 18 months. There was not a lot of opening up of new locations. It was trying to reinvent the wheel. But your model works whether COVID's here or not. That showrooming and clienteling and omni-channel, or a lot of people are referring to as a harmonized experience. was relevant before COVID. So obviously during COVID and coming out of it, you're in a great position, whereas a lot of people are trying to find what that new retail experience is. You've actually already, we're already in the journey of bringing that retail experience to life from an omni-channel perspective.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I feel like we were ahead of the curve, and are fortunate to have been ahead of the curve. I mean, we're appointment based. Last week I think we had close to 5,000 pre-booked appointments across our showroom network, and so that that's built-in demand for the retail network. We're also virtual inventory, so much like my marketplace background, I built this business based on not having inventory until the item sold, and so that allowed us to be in a really, really good position when COVID hit, because we just weren't sitting with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of inventory. And I think I was thinking back to your compliment on the Metroland deal. Like, I just think it's always important, not only to think ahead of the curve, but to think differently, right? And so back in 2015 when we started the retail journey at Indochino, everybody was like, what are you doing? Like, you're retail's dead, it's the apocalypse, you shouldn't do that. And we said no, 90%, if not more, in Canada of retail dollars are still spent in store. We're just going to figure it out. We're going to do it differently, and we can't ignore 9 in 10 customers. We have to be there. And so thinking differently and sort of paving a long-term plan is really important. We've had now 6 weeks in a row of record revenue at Indochino, which is just a testament to the team and the power of thinking ahead of the curve, right? We wouldn't be in this position if we didn't sort of reimagine how we wanted to come out of COVID. And so
that's great. And what's the future look like for your, is it more showrooms? Is it is there any innovation down the pipeline on fittings for the guys when they come in? Like, are you obviously when I was 18 months ago, I'm now 25 pounds heavier than I was 18 months ago. Not quite, but I did put on some weight.
Okay.
So my whole wardrobe has to change. And
right
now, how are you messaging and communicating with customers? Because I know I'm not the only one that has been, had this, routine, and it was basically paused for the last 18 months, and coming out of it. Now I need to get back into some old habits that were good habits, positive habits. But obviously I want to, as this business to start to open back up and I start meeting people face to face again, I want to put my suits back on. I want to look polished. And what is your go-to-market now coming out of COVID to get people really re-engaged?
So I always refer back to the framework that I use, right, in terms of growing and building businesses, and so people, product, and partners is what we tripled down on when COVID hit, and so we really, really protected our team. We expanded our product, so we now have much more casual wear than we had pre-COVID. And partnerships has been always a theme for us at Indochino, whether it be in China or Japan, across North America with organizations like the Yankees or our landlords. But we partnered with Nordstrom in a very big way, and it's been colossal, right? Like, we are now in 21 Nordstrom locations. That will expand rapidly in the years to come. We're opening, Nordstrom to a new type of customer, our customer, and also serving their customers. And so, we've just been really, really fortunate to have, that type of partnership to invest in and to make great for the benefit of customers across North America. The product expansion is super important. However, you made a good point, right? Like, the two things that we're seeing right now is, number one, weddings. The wedding season is now a 12-month phenomenon. And, we've got record number of groom and groomsmen every week. And so the wedding business is just, we can't keep up. It's just amazing. And then, people want to refresh their wardrobe, and there's a place for track pants. There's a place for shorts. and a t-shirt, but ultimately the suit and a, nice piece of outerwear, shirting, that's core to your wardrobe. And so if you've gained weight, if you've lost weight, or if you just feel like you need to have a refresh, we're seeing that customer en masse as well. And I actually think, that customer will, take hold more in September, October, when a lot of people will start going back to the office. And so I think the business is really well positioned for the next decade. We're super, super excited, and so we're just going to keep building.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, ultimately, I think of myself as a customer, and today I'm wearing a black dress shirt, and I would be wearing a tie, but I have fat neck syndrome, so I can't even get the button done up. So I know myself, like even for my podcast and my live stream, I want to refresh my wardrobe and get back into suits and looking polished, and that's why I brought it up, is because it is a real life experience for myself, as I was on Zoom for the last 18 months or Teams, and able to just, I was probably still one of the more dressed up folks, because everyone was in jogging pants and t-shirts and ball caps. But now I do know a lot of people want to get back, start feeling good about their lifestyle, change some habits. And I think you guys are in a prime position to capitalize on that, because that whole in-store experience that you were providing before COVID is now what everyone's looking coming out of COVID. And most retailers are trying to reinvent that in-store experience, and you're coming out of it in a really good position. And I appreciate the model. I've been to the Yorkdale location a number of times to be able to actually experience it. And I would encourage anyone that's looking for an omni-channel experience to get to a store and see what it's about, and talk. Like I was selfishly speaking to some of your customers and what they enjoyed about it. And it was they felt that they were really being catered to. It was more of a clienteling type of experience versus walking into a store and just trying to find something off a shelf and being left to your own devices. A lot of guys really appreciated that hand holding that they were getting from that whole Indochino experience.
Absolutely. And you know what? There's nothing worse than going to an event or a party or dinner, and the person next to you wearing the same sweater or the same jacket or the same shirt. And so one of the things that we really emphasize is that each garment is one of a kind, right? Whether it's the lining, whether it's the stitching, whether it's the material or the combination thereof, you've got, as a customer, a one of a kind Indochino. And our customers just have a lot of fun, right? Like they just love the experience. The clienteling I've heard, but just really just having a fun experience, buying clothing is something that's different, right? Yeah. Most of the time, as you walk into the store, you might be helped, you might not. You might try it on, you might not have time, or there'll be a lineup. And then you go home and it doesn't fit, or it's too, it's not exactly what you thought. And so, one of the things that's really unique about our business and speaks to, the customer satisfaction is our return rate is less than 1%, right? So if you're, building a garment on Indochino, you're building it for yourself, and, the likelihood of you bringing it back is almost zero. And so, yeah, it's a really, really fun experience, and I encourage you to get back to Yorkdale and get all dressed up again.
Yeah,
I was on BNN last week and CNBC the week before, and each time I've been talking about these roaring 20s. I think we're in for just a phenomenal decade ahead of a lot of fun, and you're going to want to dress up to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, a lot of people have been missing on just even going out to dinner or plays or just that entertaining. And I think when they do it now, they're going to appreciate it a little bit more. And I mean, I was going to plays in New York City and people were wearing shorts and a t-shirt. I think people are going to want to go back to that, where they care about these events and want to show their best of themselves as they go to these types of things. So it should be interesting to see if I'm the only one thinking that way, or a lot of people just want to step it up a notch.
Well, I can tell you, just based on the volume that we have, whether it's New York all the way through to Austin, Texas, people want to get dressed back up, and so you're part of the group, right?
Yeah.
People are not just wanting to have fun, but wanting to look great, doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's your own personal brand by dressing up. So I always think that you dress, and that's cliche, but you dress for success, and you dress to showcase your own personal brand as well. So showing up to a play in shorts and t-shirts is never something I recommend. Let's get on to, where do you think the industry overall in e-commerce is going? You've been a big player in it in Canada now for a number of years. You've got some great US experience. Maybe you see some trends happening in the US that are going to translate to Canada. What are your thoughts about the e-commerce industry going forward?
I just think there's so much opportunity. One of the incredible gifts of my life is that I came back to Canada at a time when e-commerce was just nascent, right? And, not just 9 and 10. It was probably 9.5 out of 10 people just weren't shopping online in Canada, and that's changing.
Yeah.
It's been accelerated by COVID. Retailers and businesses, I'll say in general, have been forced to really, really invest in the experience, which is something we talked about 10 years ago. And so I still think we're in the bottom of the first, to use a baseball analogy. Like, I think there's a long way to go. I think these next 2-3 decades from an e-commerce and from a direct to consumer perspective are going to be just fantastic. Like, they're just going to be phenomenal, both for the consumer as well as for business. I mentioned earlier we've invested in 30 companies, and almost every one of those companies serves the Canadian consumer in a digital format. So whether it's selling insurance online, or getting your mortgage done online, or buying apparel, healthcare, etc., we've really, really invested heavily. Our companies now are valued over $2 billion here in Canada. And so there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for Canadian entrepreneurs and people that want to work for great organizations that are focused on the Canadian consumer. And we're just going to keep doing that, right? We're going to continue to invest. And I think the years of e-commerce and direct-to-consumer online are, like I said, just really, really still early days, and there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, one of the other things I admire about your go-to-market when you're behind a brand, especially Indochino, is a lot of times people look for influencers, or they're looking for a PR agency to talk about their brand. I notice when you're part of a brand, and specifically Indochino, you are the front end line of that brand. I see you doing press releases, blogs. You're in the media quite a bit, talking about the brand and advocating for it. How did you take that strategy versus other people that would be like, let's just get an influencer to talk and be the face of Indochino?
Yeah, look, I think it's a combination of both. I appreciate you saying that. I think it's a combination, though, of both, right? I think, as the leader of the company, as the sort of person putting together the roadmap and the vision for the company, I think you have to be, front and center, right? And you have to be, explaining, what you've done, where you are, and where you're going as a company. And so, I take a lot of pride in doing that at Indochino, or in any company that I'm behind. But we don't shy away from partnering with, exceptional people. Like with Indochino, we've got hundreds and hundreds of athletes that wear the brand. Last week, Dana White, suited up for, I don't know, 25 or 30 suits in his office. And he's just such a great guy. And we appreciate his support. Trevor Lawrence in the draft. We've got 10 NBA players for this year's draft. We had 15 last year. We've got a very, very big announcement on the NFL side coming down here in a couple of weeks. And so we're just constantly hustling and really putting the brand in the hands of people that people admire, right? Whether it's Dana White or Trevor Lawrence, or that first overall NBA player. We want to, show that success beside Indochino, and we've done a really, really good job of that. We don't, influencers is an interesting sort of category and way to grow a brand. And I think there's amazing, brands are doing an amazing job of partnering. We do it a little differently. We just like to get to the partnership element of it more than just a social post or, what have you. We really try to build lasting relationships with people that we get engaged with. And so, an example would be Trevor Lawrence. Yes, draft day, yes, conference after draft day, but we actually suited him up for his wedding, a month before the draft. And we suited up his parent or his dad and his family and his groomsmen. And, we were a small part of that wedding, and I was getting text messages literally on his wedding day of how excited they were about their Indochinos. And so that's what I love. I love, partnering and building with, and we've done a good job of that, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. I think when you guys do stuff like that, it becomes a lot more authentic versus just an Instagram post, and then you never hear from that person for another year, and then all of a sudden they're engaging with another product. When you see that they're using it for real and that you're impacting their lives, then it becomes authentic. And then if they do a tweet or an Instagram post around it, it's, from a consumer perspective, it's more digestible versus, oh no, this is really phony, this is just a sponsored partnership.
Yeah. And to be fair, I mean, we're lucky because the suit is still, like I said, the core of your wardrobe. So whether you're an athlete, a business person, celebrity, what have you, you need to have a suit, at least one, if not 1,000. And so, we're lucky in the category that we're in, that we can do what we can do, I think, to a certain extent, but it's all through effort, right? Nothing happens by accident in life, as you know, and we focused on building the brand alongside other brands, whether those be individual or organizations like the Yankees and Red Sox. We've focused on that, and it's worked really well. I think we're one of the most recognizable brands now in North America, and certainly one of the fastest growing brands in the world.
Yes. Great. So to wrap this up tonight, Drew, I really appreciate you taking some time to spend with delivering e-commerce. This is my 15th episode now. I'm having a lot of fun doing it. How can people get a hold of you if they want to connect with Mr. Drew Green?
Well, pretty simple. Drew@Indochino.com is my email, and LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook also works. But that's my email, and just really, really good talking to you again. Looks like you're doing really well. I can't believe how much you've been working out. You look so good, and we'll catch each other soon. Okay.
I appreciate it, Drew, and I look forward to further conversations with you. All the best, my friend.
All right. You take care, my friend.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
You've been listening to Delivering E-commerce. It's our passion to have on leaders and suppliers in e-commerce from around the globe, setting you and your strategy up for the next level. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and we'll be back soon. Connect with Chris on LinkedIn at Chris Parsons, on LinkedIn and Spotify at Delivering E-commerce, or on YouTube at Chris Parsons Delivering E-commerce. Till next time, this is Delivering E-commerce.